I never imagined my wedding day would turn out like this. As I stood in the bridal suite, staring at the charred remains of my wedding dress, I couldn't help but wonder how everything had gone so terribly wrong. Just 30 minutes ago, I was filled with excitement and anticipation, ready to walk down the aisle and marry the love of my life, Jason. Now, I was faced with a decision that would change everything. The acrid smell of smoke still hung in the air, a constant reminder of what had transpired. My future mother-in-law, Margaret Wilson, had always made it clear that she didn't approve of me, but I never thought she'd go this far. The image of her deliberately setting fire to my wedding dress was seared into my memory, her cold eyes meeting mine as the flames consumed the delicate fabric. As I stood there, my bridesmaids frantically trying to salvage what they could, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and I refused to let Margaret's actions ruin it. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and turned to face my best friend and maid of honor, Sarah. "We need a plan," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos around us. "And I think I know just what to do." Sarah looked at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of concern and admiration. "Valerie, are you sure? We can postpone the wedding, give ourselves time to—" I cut her off with a shake of my head. "No, we're not postponing anything. Margaret wants to sabotage this wedding. But I won't let her win. Get me my laptop and call the videographer. We're going to make sure everyone knows exactly what happened here today." As Sarah rushed to do as I asked, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. My carefully styled hair was coming undone, and there were smudges of ash on my face. But beneath it all, I saw a determination in my eyes that I hadn't realized I possessed. This was my day, and I was going to take control of it. Within minutes, we had the laptop set up and connected to the live stream that was supposed to broadcast our ceremony to friends and family who couldn't attend in person. I took one last look at my bridesmaids, who nodded encouragingly, before turning to face the camera. "Hello, everyone," I began, my voice only slightly shaky. "I'm sure you're all wondering why you're seeing me here instead of at the altar. Well, I have a story to tell you, and it's not the fairy tale wedding you were expecting." As I recounted the events of the past half hour, I could see the comments flooding in through the live chat. Shock, outrage, and support poured in from our guests and even strangers who had stumbled upon the stream. I detailed Margaret's actions, her long-standing disapproval of me, and her attempt to sabotage the wedding. "But here's the thing," I continued, feeling stronger with each word. "I love Jason with all my heart, and I won't let anyone, not even his mother, stand in the way of our happiness. So I'm asking all of you watching, will you stand with us? Will you help us show that love can triumph over adversity?" The response was overwhelming. Messages of support flooded the chat, and I could hear commotion from outside the bridal suite as guests reacted to the news. In that moment, I knew we had turned the tide. Margaret's attempt to ruin our wedding had only made it more meaningful. "Thank you all," I said, tears of gratitude welling up in my eyes. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a wedding to attend. And don't worry about the dress, I've got it covered." As I ended the live stream, I turned to my bridesmaids with a smile. "All right, ladies, let's make some magic happen." The next 20 minutes were a whirlwind of activity. My bridesmaids worked miracles, helping me into the simple white sundress I had packed as a backup for our honeymoon. It wasn't the grand gown I had envisioned, but as I looked at myself in the mirror, I realized it was perfect. This dress represented who I truly was: adaptable, resilient, and ready to face whatever life threw my way. As we made our way to the ceremony site, I could hear the buzz of excitement from the guests. Word had spread quickly, and the atmosphere was electric. I paused at the entrance, taking a deep breath to steady myself. This was it, the moment of truth. The music began, and I stepped into view. The collective gasp from the audience was audible, followed by a wave of applause that brought tears to my eyes. As I walked down the aisle, I saw faces filled with admiration and support. But the only face that truly mattered was Jason's. He stood at the altar, his eyes locked on mine, filled with a love so pure it took my breath away. As I reached him, he took my hands in his, squeezing them gently. "You look beautiful," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry about what happened, but I want you to know that I'm with you, 100%. I smiled up at him, feeling all my fears and doubts melt away. "I know," I replied softly. "That's why I'm here. You and me against the world if we have to be." The ceremony that followed was unlike anything I could have imagined. Our officiant, who had been briefed on the situation, spoke about the power of love to overcome obstacles and the strength found in unity. As we exchanged our vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. "I, Valerie Mitchell, take you, Jason Wilson, to be my lawfully wedded husband," I began, my voice strong and clear. "I promise to stand by your side through all of life's challenges, to face adversity with courage and grace, and to love you unconditionally, no matter what forces may try to come between us." Jason's vows were equally moving, and as he slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt a sense of triumph that went beyond just marrying the man I loved. We had faced our first major test as a couple and come out stronger for it. As we were pronounced husband and wife, the cheers from our guests were deafening. We turned to face the crowd, hands clasped tightly together, ready to begin our new life as a married couple. The reception that followed was a celebration like no other. The atmosphere was charged with emotion and solidarity. Guests came up to us throughout the night, offering words of support and admiration for how we had handled the situation. Even those who had initially been skeptical of our relationship seemed to have had a change of heart. As we swayed together during our first dance, Jason leaned in close, his breath warm against my ear. "I can't believe how amazing you've been today," he murmured. "I always knew you were strong, but seeing you stand up to my mother like that, I've never been more in love with you than I am right now." I pulled back slightly to look into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and adoration there. "We're a team," I replied softly. "Whatever life throws at us, we'll face it together." As the night wore on, I found myself constantly amazed by the outpouring of love and support from our friends and family. Even Jason's father, Thomas, who had always been quiet and reserved, approached us with tears in his eyes. "Valerie," he said, his voice choked with emotion, "I want you to know that I don't condone what Margaret did. You've shown incredible strength and grace today, and I'm proud to welcome you into our family." His words meant more to me than I could express, and I hugged him tightly, feeling a sense of acceptance I had long yearned for. As the reception came to a close and we prepared to leave for our honeymoon, I couldn't help but reflect on how this day had transformed from a potential disaster into something truly extraordinary. We had not only gotten married, but had also shown the world the power of love and resilience in the face of adversity. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of our journey. The events of our wedding day would have far-reaching consequences, not just for us, but for countless others who would be inspired by our story. As we drove away from the reception, confetti still clinging to our clothes and the cheers of our guests ringing in our ears, I turned to Jason with a smile. "So, Mr. Wilson," I said playfully, "are you ready for our next adventure?" He grinned back at me, his eyes sparkling with love and excitement. "With you by my side, Mrs. Wilson, I'm ready for anything." And with that, we set off into the night, leaving behind the drama of the day and looking forward to the future we would build together. Little did we know, the ripples of what had transpired at our wedding were already spreading, setting in motion events that would change not only our lives, but the lives of many others. The first few days of our honeymoon were a blissful escape from the chaos of the wedding. We had chosen a small, secluded beach resort, wanting nothing more than to bask in each other's company and the newfound joy of being husband and wife. As we lounged on the sand, the warm sun kissing our skin and the gentle waves providing a soothing backdrop. It was easy to forget the drama that had marked the start of our marriage. But reality has a way of intruding, even in paradise. It was on our third day when Jason's phone, which we had been steadfastly ignoring, began to buzz incessantly. With a sigh, he finally picked it up, his brow furrowing as he scrolled through the messages. "Val," he said, his voice a mixture of disbelief and awe, "you need to see this." I leaned over, squinting at the screen in the bright sunlight. What I saw made my jaw drop. Our wedding story had gone viral. The live stream I had impulsively decided to do had been picked up by news outlets, and social media was ablaze with discussions about toxic family dynamics, standing up to bullies, and the power of love to overcome adversity. There were countless messages of support, people sharing their own stories of difficult in-laws and family conflicts. But what struck me most were the comments from women who said our story had given them the courage to stand up for themselves in their own relationships. "This is overwhelming," I murmured, not quite sure how to process the sudden attention. Jason wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. "You're amazing, you know that? You turned what could have been a disaster into something inspiring for so many people." I leaned into him, grateful for his unwavering support. "We did it together," I reminded him. "I couldn't have gotten through that day without you by my side." As we continued to scroll through the messages, a new email notification popped up. It was from a prominent women's magazine requesting an interview with us about our experience and how we managed to turn a potential wedding disaster into a powerful statement about love and resilience. Jason looked at me questioningly. "What do you think? Should we do it?" I took a moment to consider. Part of me wanted to keep our story private, to focus on building our life together without the scrutiny of the public eye. But another part of me recognized the potential to help others who might be facing similar challenges. "Let's do it," I decided. If our story can help even one person find the strength to stand up for themselves or their relationship, it's worth sharing. Jason smiled, placing a gentle kiss on my forehead. That's my girl, always thinking of others. We spent the rest of our honeymoon alternating between enjoying our time together and preparing for the interview. As we talked through our experiences, I found myself gaining new insights into the dynamics that had led to the wedding day drama. "You know," I said to Jason one evening as we walked along the beach, the setting sun painting the sky in vibrant hues, "I think in a way, your mother did us a favor." He looked at me incredulously. "How do you figure that?" I squeezed his hand, choosing my words carefully. "Don't get me wrong, what she did was terrible, but it forced us to confront the issues in your family head on. We didn't start our marriage pretending everything was perfect. Instead, we faced a huge challenge together and came out stronger for it." Jason was quiet for a moment, considering my words. "You're right," he finally said. "As much as I wish things had been different, I'm proud of how we handled it. And I think it's made me realize some things about my relationship with my parents that I've been avoiding for a long time." I leaned my head on his shoulder as we walked, feeling a deep sense of connection. We had weathered our first storm as a married couple, and I was confident that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. As our honeymoon came to an end and we prepared to return home, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. Our story had taken on a life of its own, and I knew that going back meant facing not only the fallout with Jason's family, but also the public attention our wedding had garnered. "Are you ready for this?" Jason asked as we boarded our flight home. I took a deep breath, squeezing his hand. "As long as we're together, I'm ready for anything." Little did I know, the journey ahead would test that resolve in ways I could never have imagined. Our wedding day drama was just the beginning of a series of events that would challenge us, change us, and ultimately lead us to make a difference in the lives of others facing similar struggles. As the plane took off, carrying us back to our new reality, I closed my eyes and said a silent prayer. Whatever lay ahead, I was grateful to have Jason by my side, and I was determined to use our experience to help others find the strength to stand up for themselves and their relationships. The reality of our newfound notoriety hit us full force as soon as we stepped off the plane. Flashes from cameras greeted us, and a small crowd of reporters called out questions. Jason instinctively moved closer to me, his arm around my waist, both protective and supportive. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, how does it feel to be back?" "Valerie, do you have any words for your mother-in-law?" "Jason, have you spoken to your mother since the wedding?" The barrage of questions was overwhelming, but we managed to navigate through the crowd with polite smiles and a few brief comments about being happy to be home and looking forward to starting our life together. As we made our way to the car, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of anxiety. This was our new normal, at least for now. Once safely in the car, Jason turned to me, concern etched on his face. "Are you okay? I had no idea it would be like that." I took a deep breath, centering myself. "I'm fine. It's just a lot to take in. But we knew this might happen, right? We'll get through it together." He nodded, squeezing my hand. Together. Always. As we drove home, I couldn't help but wonder how our families had been coping with the attention. We had been in a bubble during our honeymoon, deliberately avoiding most contact to focus on each other. Now, we were diving headfirst back into the aftermath of our wedding day drama. Our apartment was a welcome sight, a haven from the chaos outside. As soon as we stepped inside, I felt some of the tension leave my body. This was our space, our home, where we could be ourselves away from prying eyes. We had barely set down our bags when my phone rang. It was my mom. "Valerie, sweetheart. Are you home? How was the flight? Do you need anything?" Her rapid-fire questions made me smile. Some things never changed. "We're fine, Mom. Just got in. How are things there? Has it been crazy?" There was a pause, and I could almost see her, biting her lip, trying to decide how much to tell me. "It's been interesting. Your story has really touched a lot of people, honey. But don't you worry about that now. You and Jason just focus on settling in. We can talk more later." After assuring her we were okay and promising to visit soon, I hung up and turned to Jason. He was staring at his phone, his expression unreadable. "Jason, what is it?" He looked up, his eyes conflicted. "It's my dad. He wants to meet with us, says it's important." I felt a knot form in my stomach. We hadn't heard much from Jason's parents since the wedding, aside from a terse message from his father congratulating us and apologizing for his wife's behavior. I knew this meeting was inevitable, but I had hoped for a little more time to adjust to being home. "When does he want to meet?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Tomorrow. Afternoon." He suggested that cafe near their house. Jason ran a hand through his hair, a sign I knew meant he was stressed. "Val, we don't have to go if you're not ready. I can tell him we need more time." I considered it for a moment. Part of me wanted to put it off, to enjoy a few more days in our newlywed bubble. But I knew that avoiding the situation wouldn't make it any easier. "No, let's do it," I said, summoning my courage. "The sooner we face this, the sooner we can move forward. Together, remember?" Jason's face softened, and he pulled me into a tight embrace. "What did I do to deserve you?" he murmured into my hair. We spent the rest of the evening unpacking and trying to relax, but there was an undercurrent of tension as we both mentally prepared for the meeting ahead. That night, as we lay in bed, I found myself unable to sleep, my mind racing with possibilities of what Jason's father might want to discuss. The next day dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil I felt inside. As we got ready to meet Thomas, I found myself paying extra attention to my appearance, wanting to present a strong, composed front. The drive to the cafe was quiet, both of us lost in our own thoughts. As we pulled into the parking lot, Jason turned off the engine, but made no move to get out of the car. "Val," he said, his voice serious, Whatever happens in there, I want you to know that you're my priority. If things get uncomfortable or if you want to leave at any point, just say the word." I leaned over and kissed him softly. "I know. We're in this together." As we entered the cafe, I spotted Thomas immediately. He was sitting in a corner booth, looking older and more tired than I remembered. When he saw us, he stood up, a hesitant smile on his face. "Jason, Valerie," he greeted us, his voice warm but tinged with nervousness. "Thank you for coming." We sat down, and an awkward silence fell over the table. Thomas cleared his throat, clearly struggling to find the right words. "First of all," he began, "I want to apologize again for what happened at the wedding. Margaret's actions were inexcusable, and I want you both to know that I don't condone what she did in any way." I nodded, appreciating his words, but waiting to see where this was going. Jason squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support. Thomas continued, "The reason I wanted to meet is, well, things have changed since the wedding. Margaret and we're separating." The news hit like a thunderbolt. I felt Jason stiffen beside me, his grip on my hand tightening. "Dad," Jason said, his voice strained, "I'm so sorry. Is this because of what happened at the wedding?" Thomas shook his head, a sad smile on his face. "No, son." "Well, not entirely. The truth is, your wedding day just brought to light issues that have been simmering for years. Margaret's behavior, it made me realize that I've been enabling her toxic attitudes for far too long. Seeing how you two handled the situation, the strength and love you showed, it made me see what a real partnership should look like." I felt a lump form in my throat, touched by his words and the pain evident in his eyes. "What happens now?" I asked gently. Thomas sighed, running a hand over his face. "I'm not sure. But I do know that I want to make things right, with both of you. I've spent too many years staying quiet, not standing up for what's right. I don't want to be that person anymore." Jason was quiet for a moment, processing his father's words. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Dad, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry you're going through this, but I'm proud of you for taking a stand." Thomas reached across the table, grasping Jason's free hand. "I'm the one who should be proud. You've grown into a remarkable man, Jason. And Valerie," he turned to me, his eyes sincere, "I meant what I said at the wedding. I'm honored to have you as part of our family. The way you handled everything, you're an extraordinary woman." Tears pricked at my eyes, and I blinked them back. "Thank you, Thomas. That means a lot to me." We spent the next hour talking, really. Talking in a way that Jason later told me had never happened before in his family. Thomas opened up about the years of tension in his marriage, the regrets he had about not standing up to Margaret's behavior sooner, and his hopes for rebuilding his relationship with Jason. As we prepared to leave, Thomas hesitated, then pulled out an envelope. "There's one more thing," he said. "I know your wedding day wasn't what you had planned, and while nothing can make up for that, I want to help you create some new memories." He handed the envelope to Jason, who opened it to find 2 first-class tickets to Paris. "Dad, we can't accept this," Jason protested, but Thomas held up a hand. "Please, I want you to have this. Consider it a proper wedding gift and a small step towards making amends." After some discussion, we accepted the gift, touched by the gesture and the thought behind it. As we said our goodbyes, I felt a sense of hope that I hadn't expected from this meeting. While the road ahead might still be rocky, it felt like we had taken an important step towards healing. On the drive home, Jason was quiet, processing everything that had happened. I let him have his silence, knowing he needed time to sort through his emotions. Finally, as we neared our apartment, he spoke. "You know, when I was growing up, I always wished my dad would stand up to my mom, set some boundaries. I never thought I'd see the day when he actually did it. I reached over, placing my hand on his knee. It's never too late for people to change, to choose a different path. Jason nodded, a small smile forming on his lips. You're right. And speaking of choosing paths, what do you think about this trip to Paris? I couldn't help but grin. I think it sounds like a perfect opportunity for us to make some new memories, just like your dad said. As we walked into our apartment, hand in hand, I felt a renewed sense of optimism. We had faced our first major challenge as a married couple and come out stronger. And while I knew there would be more obstacles ahead, I was confident that together we could handle anything life threw our way. Little did I know, our story was about to take another unexpected turn, one that would challenge us in ways we never anticipated and lead us down a path we never could have imagined. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Between settling into married life, planning our trip to Paris, and dealing with the continued attention from our viral wedding story, Jason and I barely had a moment to catch our breath. But through it all, our bond grew stronger, our shared experiences cementing our partnership in ways we hadn't anticipated. It was a crisp autumn morning when the email arrived that would change the course of our lives. I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through my inbox, when I saw a message from a name I didn't recognize. Elena Rodriguez, Executive Director of the Women's Empowerment Foundation. Curious, I opened the email and began to read. As I did, my eyes widened, and I felt my heart begin to race. "Jason!" I called out, my voice filled with excitement and disbelief. "You need to see this!" He hurried into the room, concern etched on his face. "What is it? Is everything okay?" I nodded, unable to contain my smile. "More than okay. Read this." Jason leaned over my shoulder, his eyes quickly scanning the email. The message was an invitation for us to speak at the Women's Empowerment Foundation's annual gala. They had been inspired by our wedding story and wanted us to share our experience with standing up to toxic family dynamics and the importance of supporting one another in relationships. "Wow," Jason breathed, his surprise evident. "This is incredible. What do you think? Should we do it?" I turned to face him, my mind already racing with possibilities. "I think we have to. This could be an opportunity to really make a difference, to help other people who might be facing similar situations." Jason nodded slowly, a smile spreading across his face. "You're right. And who knows? Maybe this could be the start of something bigger." His words were prophetic, though we didn't know it at the time. That email was the first step on a journey that would not only change our lives, but the lives of countless others. The weeks leading up to the gala were a flurry of preparation. We worked together to craft our speech, drawing on our personal experience, but also researching the broader issues of family dynamics and emotional abuse. The more we delved into the topic, the more passionate we became about raising awareness and offering support to others. The night of the gala arrived, and as we stood backstage, waiting to be introduced, I felt a familiar flutter of nerves in my stomach. Jason must have sensed my anxiety because he reached out and took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "We've got this," he whispered, his eyes meeting mine with unwavering confidence. I took a deep breath, drawing strength from his presence. "Together," I replied, our now familiar mantra grounding me in the moment. As we walked out onto the stage, the bright lights momentarily blinding us, I was struck by the sea of faces looking back at us. Each person in the audience had their own story, their own struggles and triumphs. In that moment, I felt the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. We had a chance to make a real impact, to offer hope and inspiration to those who needed it most. I began our speech, my voice shaky at first, but growing stronger with each word. "Good evening, everyone. Our story begins on what should have been the happiest day of our lives." As we recounted the events of our wedding day and the aftermath, I could feel the audience hanging on every word. There were gasps of shock when we described Margaret's actions, murmurs of approval when we talked about standing up to her, and nods of understanding as we discussed the complex emotions involved in dealing with toxic family members. But it was when we moved beyond our personal story, discussing the broader implications and offering advice to others facing similar situations, that I felt the energy in the room shift. People were leaning forward in their seats, many wiping away tears or nodding vigorously. "The most important thing we learned," Jason said, his voice filled with emotion, "is that love, true partnership, can overcome even the most daunting obstacles. But it takes courage. The courage to stand up for yourself, for your partner, for what you believe is right." I picked up where he left off, feeling a surge of passion. And it's not just about romantic relationships. It's about all our connections. With family, friends, colleagues. We all have the power to choose how we respond to negativity and toxicity in our lives. We can choose to break the cycle, to create healthier dynamics, to support and uplift each other. As we concluded our speech, the applause was thunderous. People rose to their feet, and I felt overwhelmed by the outpouring of support and appreciation. But it was what happened after the gala that truly set us on our new path. We were approached by countless individuals, each with their own story to share. Some had tears in their eyes as they thanked us for giving voice to experiences they had struggled with in silence. Others asked for advice, seeking guidance on how to navigate their own challenging family situations. One woman in particular stood out. She introduced herself as Samantha, her eyes red from crying, but filled with a newfound determination. "Your story. It gave me the courage to finally leave my emotionally abusive partner," she told us, her voice shaking slightly. "I've been afraid for so long, but hearing you speak tonight made me realize that I deserve better, that I have the strength to start over." Her words hit me like a physical force, the reality of the impact we could have suddenly crystal clear. As we made our way home that night, Jason and I were quiet, both lost in thought. Finally, as we entered our apartment, Jason turned to me, his eyes shining with a mix of emotion and excitement. "Val, I think we've found our calling." I nodded, understanding immediately what he meant. We have to do more. We can't just stop with one speech. And so, in the weeks that followed, we began to formulate a plan. We reached out to Elena Rodriguez, the woman who had initially invited us to speak, and shared our ideas. She was enthusiastic, offering resources and connections to help us get started. We decided to create a foundation of our own, one dedicated to supporting individuals dealing with toxic family dynamics and helping them build healthier relationships. We would offer counseling services, support groups, and educational programs. But more than that, we wanted to create a community, a safe space where people could share their stories and find the strength to make positive changes in their lives. As we worked to bring our vision to life, we faced numerous challenges. There were legal hurdles to overcome, funding to secure, and programs to develop. But through it all, Jason and I remained united, our shared purpose strengthening our bond even further. We named our foundation Unbreakable Bonds, a testament to the strength we found in our relationship and the power of healthy connections to overcome adversity. As word of our work spread, we began to receive messages from people all over the country, sharing their stories and asking for help. One evening, as we sat in our home office, poring over plans for our first major fundraising event, I looked up at Jason and felt a wave of emotion wash over me. "Can you believe how far we've come?" I asked, thinking back to that chaotic wedding day that now seemed so long ago. Jason smiled, reaching out to take my hand. "It's amazing, isn't it? Who would have thought that my mother trying to ruin our wedding would lead to all of this?" I laughed, the absurdity of it all hitting me anew. Life has a funny way of working out sometimes, but I wouldn't change a thing. Well, maybe the burning dress part. As we chuckled together, I felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over me. Despite all the challenges we had faced, or perhaps because of them, we had found our purpose. We were making a difference in the world, helping others find the strength and courage to stand up for themselves and build healthier relationships. Our journey was far from over. We still had a long road ahead, filled with both challenges and triumphs. But as I looked at Jason, his eyes filled with love and determination, I knew that whatever came our way, we would face it together. Our bond, tested by fire on our wedding day, had only grown stronger, and I was excited to see where our path would lead us next. As the weeks turned into months, unbreakable bonds grew beyond our wildest expectations. We had started small, operating out of a tiny office and relying heavily on volunteers. But word spread quickly, and soon we found ourselves fielding calls and emails from all over the country. Our first major success came when we partnered with a local community center to offer free counseling sessions and support groups. The response was overwhelming, with slots filling up almost immediately. Seeing the impact we were having on people's lives was both humbling and inspiring. One crisp autumn afternoon, as I was leaving the community center after a particularly emotional group session, I ran into Samantha, the woman who had approached us at the gala. She looked different now, her posture straighter, her eyes brighter. "Valerie!" she exclaimed, pulling me into a surprise hug. "I was hoping I'd run into you. I just wanted to thank you again. Your foundation, it's changed my life." We chatted for a few minutes, and Samantha shared how she had not only left her abusive partner, but had also repaired her relationship with her estranged sister, who was now her biggest support. As I watched her walk away, head held high, I felt a lump form in my throat. This was why we were doing this. This was what it was all about. When I got home that evening and shared the encounter with Jason, he listened with a soft smile on his face. "You know," he said, pulling me close, "I fall in love with you a little more every day, watching you pour your heart into this work." I leaned into his embrace, feeling a warmth spread through me. "We're doing this together," I reminded him. "I couldn't do any of it without you." As our foundation grew, so did the challenges we faced. We were constantly juggling the demands of running a nonprofit with our personal lives, and there were days when it felt overwhelming. But through it all, Jason and I remained a team, supporting each other and finding strength in our shared purpose. It was about a year after we started Unbreakable Bonds that we received news that would test us in ways we never expected. I was in the middle of a board meeting when my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Need to talk. Important. Call when you can." My heart raced as I excused myself and stepped out to call him. "Jason? What's going on?" His voice was tight with emotion when he answered. "It's my mom, Val. She's in the hospital. Dad just called. She had a stroke." I felt my stomach drop. Despite everything that had happened, I knew how much Jason still cared for his mother. "I'm on my way home," I said, already gathering my things. "We'll figure this out together." The next few days were a blur of hospital visits and family discussions. Margaret's condition was serious but stable, and the doctors were cautiously optimistic about her recovery. But the stroke had left her weakened and vulnerable, forcing everyone to confront the fragility of life and the importance of family. As we sat by Margaret's bedside, watching her sleep, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed since our wedding day. The woman who had tried to sabotage our wedding now looked small and frail, her face pale against the stark white hospital sheets. Jason held her hand gently, his eyes filled with a complex mix of emotions. "I don't know how to feel," he confessed to me in a quiet moment. "There's still so much anger and hurt, but seeing her like this, I can't help but remember the good times too, you know?" I nodded, understanding the conflict he was experiencing. "It's okay to have complicated feelings, Jason. What she did was wrong, but she's still your mother. It's natural to care." As Margaret began her long recovery process, we found ourselves faced with difficult decisions. She would need care and support, but the years of toxic behavior had left deep scars on the family. It was Thomas who surprised us all by stepping up, despite their separation. "I may not be her husband anymore," he told us one evening as we discussed care options. "But I made a vow to stand by her in sickness and in health. I won't abandon her now." His words sparked a long, emotional conversation about forgiveness, responsibility, and the possibility of redemption. It was a dialogue that would continue for months as we all grappled with the complex emotions stirred up by Margaret's illness. For Jason and me, the situation presented a unique challenge. How could we maintain boundaries and protect our own emotional well-being while also offering support? It was a balancing act that tested the strength of our relationship and the principles we had built our foundation on. We decided to approach the situation with cautious optimism, offering help where we could but also maintaining clear boundaries. We arranged for professional care for Margaret, contributed to her medical expenses, and visited regularly. But we also made it clear that any future relationship would depend on her willingness to acknowledge her past behavior and make genuine efforts to change. As Margaret slowly recovered, something unexpected began to happen. The vulnerability of her condition seemed to soften some of her hard edges. During one of our visits, as Jason was helping her with her physical therapy exercises, she looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice weak but sincere. "For everything. I didn't know how to love you properly. I was so afraid of losing you that I almost drove you away completely." It was a breakthrough moment, the first step on a long journey of healing for the entire family. Over the following months, as Margaret regained her strength, she also began the difficult work of confronting her own behaviors and their impact on her relationships. For Jason and me, watching this transformation was both inspiring and challenging. It forced us to confront our own capacity for forgiveness and growth. We had built unbreakable bonds on the principle of helping people overcome toxic family dynamics, but now we were living that mission in a deeply personal way. One evening, as we lay in bed discussing the day's events, Jason turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know, I've been thinking, maybe we should share this part of our story too, the part about reconciliation and second chances." I propped myself up on one elbow, considering his words. "You're right. It's an important part of the journey for many people. But are you sure you're comfortable putting this out there? It's so personal." Jason nodded slowly. "I think it's important. We've always been honest about our experiences. This is just another chapter in our story, and it might help others who are struggling with similar situations." And so, we began to incorporate this new aspect into our work with Unbreakable Bonds. We developed programs focused on forgiveness and reconciliation, always emphasizing that these processes should only be pursued in situations where it was safe and healthy to do so. Our story of cautious reconciliation with Margaret resonated with many of the people we worked with. It offered hope that change was possible, while also acknowledging the complexity and difficulty of the process. As we approached the second anniversary of our wedding and the founding of Unbreakable Bonds, Jason and I found ourselves reflecting on the incredible journey we had been on. From the drama of our wedding day to the growth of our foundation and the unexpected turns in our family relationships, we had faced challenges we never could have anticipated. But through it all, our bond had only grown stronger. We had learned to lean on each other, to communicate openly and honestly, and to face each new challenge as a team. Our experiences had not only shaped our marriage, but had given us a purpose larger than ourselves. One sunny afternoon, as we walked, hand in hand through the park near our home, Jason suddenly stopped and turned to face me. "Val," he said, his eyes shining with emotion, "I want you to know how grateful I am for you, for your strength, your compassion, your unwavering support. I can't imagine going through any of this without you by my side. I felt tears prick at my eyes as I squeezed his hand. "We've been through so much together," I replied softly. "But I wouldn't change a thing. Every challenge has only made us stronger." As we continued our walk, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement for what the future held. We had come so far, but I knew that our journey was far from over. There would be more challenges to face, more lives to touch, more growth to experience. But whatever lay ahead, I was confident that we would face it together. Our love, tested by fire on our wedding day and strengthened through every trial since, was truly unbreakable. And through our work with Unbreakable Bonds, we had the opportunity to help others find that same strength in their own relationships. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, I looked at Jason and felt a wave of love and gratitude wash over me. This was not the life I had imagined when I first met him, but it was better than anything I could have dreamed. We had taken the challenges life had thrown at us and turned them into opportunities for growth and positive change. Our story was still being written, each day bringing new experiences and opportunities. But one thing was certain: whatever the future held, we would face it together, our bond unbreakable, our love enduring. As we made our way home, I couldn't help but smile, thinking of all the lives we had touched and all those we had yet to reach. Our wedding day drama had been just the beginning of an incredible journey, one that had led us to find our true purpose and the deepest meaning of partnership. And so, hand in hand, we walked into the sunset, ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead, confident in the strength of our love and the power of unbreakable bonds.